Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Land Development Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Glick. And if this is your first time joining us, our show is dedicated to having on individuals associated with the industry and hearing more about their origin story, as well as talking about some of the projects that they have going on and that they've worked on in the past. And today I'm excited to be joined by John Hillman. John is the founder and broker at Cabana Lane. John, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, where I want to start is digging into a little bit of the beginning of your career. When I was looking back at kind of seeing how you got your start, it seems like you started in the sales space, and so I'm
Mhm.
curious. I'm curious, like kind of rewinding back as to like what took you down that path of getting into sales.
Sure. Yeah, I always say I'm a developer with a sales guy's heart, right? So I went to actually a military college, the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. And upon graduation, I had the bug to get into the startup software space. And one of my great mentors in my life, John Sterling, hired me, a fresh, right out of college guy, and we all learned the craft of selling, how to basically sell. We used to tease in software, we'd sell something you didn't know you needed, or what the solution was, but you had to have it. Um, and we started working over the phones with this, and then the company grew, and I think I was employed 20 or 30, and we grew up to be about 100, and it just kept evolving. And so then I became a traveling sales guy. I moved my family to the DC area, Atlanta, different places. And along the way, about 10 years in, I'd been part of two publicly traded startups that became publicly traded. And that was a fun experience. And I knew I was always a startup guy, but I wanted something a little more permanent in my life. I just finished an MBA, and I grew up in a golf community. I was a golfer as a kid and played in college. And I just had I wanted to go create things that I thought would be more lasting. And ironically, one of my sales engineers in the software industry said, "Hey, I've got a fraternity brother who runs a really niche sales and marketing company for real estate developers. And oh, by the way, he's got a place in Hawaii that he needs people." And so I'm like, sign me up. I was 30, 31, and my wife and I have been married 6, 7 years, no kids. So I made the leap of faith to go into becoming a real estate developer sales guy. And I got my start at the Ritz Carlton in uptown Dallas. I never forget my first meeting. They did these kind of wine and cheese events, kind of networking moments where they were introducing the project to the Dallas market. And you can imagine I'm in this top floor unit, looking down over the site, all mahogany wood, all these people dressed up, all these people like really excited. And so I went from like being a sales guy to like solve people from more pain and try to how to optimize a manufacturing line to, oh my God, I get to deal with the same people and I get to help them find more pleasure in their lives. So anyway, it was kind of a fun transition. It was a chance for me to help people get more out of their lives, to enjoy it. And what better than to live in Dallas and have a Ritz Carlton hotel bringing you room service every day to your condo unit. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's where it all started. 6 months into it, I was their top sales guy, and the company said, John, why don't you run the thing? So then I was the sales director for that project, and we finished out the first phase. And then I've just been moving along, right? I went from there to the Bahamas, and we did the Ocean Club residences in Marina. I was there for about 3 or 4 years. Didn't know anything about marinas or all that, but I knew that really wealthy people would buy a condo unit for the privilege of buying the slip so they could park their multi-million-dollar yacht in the basin. So great learning experience there. And then, what probably will probably tie better into this conversation is I got my first crack at land. And I was part of a early stage development team for a pretty renowned project in Kauai named Kukui'ula. And Kukui'ula was on the south shore of the island, several hundred-acre development. I think it was close to 1,000. And we were going to develop one of the nicest land development projects there with a private club. And so all along the way, I've had the chance to work on, you know, urban, condo projects with branded hotels, condo marina, golf course communities, private gated, and now I'm working on Crane Island, basically running the brokerage and running the builder program here. And so, when I think about land, it's the art of, how do you imagine what you could do there? What would be the story of the land, and what did we learn from it? That often infuses the architectural character and story. And then the big one for me is also, how do you create a lifestyle and a quality of life that helps people really embrace and enjoy the property? And that's probably where I've come in my life in the development world, is sales, marketing, branding. But really where I obsess now is around architecture, builder programs, and then the lifestyle piece. And that's kind of my niche. I'm not the engineer. I'm not the CFO kind of guy, even though, I can run pivot tables like most people, but I don't enjoy it. I really enjoy being out in the field and really working the land and understanding what you could do with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You have such a wide range of experience and everything over the years, which I'm sure it all kind of plays into each other and helps you in different ways. And
For sure.
one of the things you mentioned there early on was your having a good mentor early on. I think you said it was John Sterling was the name of someone that you had early on. And how has that played a role in your career as you've jumped from, as you were started out in sales on the software side, and then you shifted over to doing sales in the, real estate side? Have you had mentors kind of in those niches all along the way that have kind of helped you understand it, or has it been trial by fire, or kind of what's been your path?
Yeah, no, I've been really fortunate in my career to have multiple people who help shape a lot of my thinking and continue to be mentors to me in the business. I think everything we do is a super collaborative effort. So one of the opportunities, and it was during the kind of the downturn of '08, '09, I was fortunate enough to go down to the Cayman Islands and work with a team that was passionate about building a new town. And that's just a lofty goal into itself. Like, how do you think about doing that? So being able to work with land planners, town architects, I worked with John Torty from Torty Gallus, who's done a lot of great work in the transit sort of world up in DC and around the country, more urban. But the one gentleman, and he still serves as a great mentor to me, is Mike Watkins. And Mike Watkins he's been a town architect in multiple places. He's often the kind of guy that gets brought in when a new community is starting, and you got to do a public charrette to kind of explain what's going to happen and why is it important and what do they care about. Well, Mike has always been really great at communicating that. But the thing he taught to me, and I still use it today, is this idea of gifts to the street. What does your home help to your block, and your block to your neighborhood, and creating those sort of gift moments where it could be little detail things like your fence detail and potted plants near the entry gate, or you'll see in some places little simple things, and these are more community driven. But I've seen families that put out a dog water bowl. They put out even biscuits, and it sounds kind of homey and quirky, and like, oh, John, people really don't live like that. But when you really think about, if you take that serious and you're a community developer, that stuff creates a mindset, and mindset creates place. And so if everybody's kind of working towards that common goal, that's a great thing. And so Mike was excellent for that. I don't know if I ever told this guy this, but Bob Turner from Habersham in South Carolina. Bob started Habersham probably close to 20 years ago. And he got to work with some of the greats like DPZ, who does a lot of land planning work. They're really sort of the standard bearers of what's called new urbanism. And learning about new urbanism is about, how do you create places that really honor how old places were put together, that had walkable streets, they had compact villages and town centers, they had schools and networks of parks, and it created this glue that brought people together. And it's a really incredible way when you think about land and how you make density actually feel good. And it really just is about how favorite places. I'm from Charleston, and I just love walking the streets of Charleston because I see retail that I love and how it's put together. I see these little secret restaurants tucked around corners, but I really love the way the homes were put together there. But Bob did this in a modern day format with Habersham, He's just a super guy to know and be around, and the way he explains things. He's very successful, but he's very humble in how he does it, and that's just, I think, a great leadership quality. And I still, we still, I do things for him too. I bring in a sales capability and train his team and do stuff like that from time to time. But there's been, and lots of other architects. Probably in my business, I've learned more from guys like Cooter Ramsey from Allison Ramsey and Eric Mosier from Mosier Design Group. Um, One of my favorites is Luke Sipple from Lake and Land Studio. And he's a 30-something-year-old guy. He just got his house as the National Idea House, he and his partner Bill. And Lake and Land Studio is one of these great up and coming teams. And he takes a classicism like Low Country, where I operate in, and he brings new life to it. I sort of call it Low Country 2.0. And he does it all in 3D, and he makes it really approachable for people, because people, they struggle with what to do on land. And then when you get a great architect who can visually present it and immerse you in it, it makes my job easier from a sales and marketing point of view. So, um, and there's probably a ton of people I'm missing, but those are some of the key ones in my career.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really like to hear that because it's something that I think a lot of times people do. They kind of go out and they try to attack things on their own, which I mean, you can get to the end goal eventually, but I think you can definitely share in some of the lessons learned from your mentors when you can talk through some things ahead of time with them. And so that's why it's so interesting to ask that question and kind of hear what your experience has been like.
Yeah, and I would tell you, if anybody's listening, I was never afraid to cold call people. And there's a gentleman named Matthew Cray in Naples, MHK Architecture, and they've really exploded. But when Matthew was first getting started, I walked by a home he had done in Old Naples, and I loved it so much that I had to find the guy and work with him. And so I would tell people, don't be afraid to just pick up the phone and tell them why you're calling them, and that you want to collaborate. And land developers particularly, there are lots of architects. They're not the greatest marketers, by the way, which is no surprise. So sometimes you got to go stir the pot, and I was always very willing to go stir the pot with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been all over the place, just based on all the different locations that you were talking about. But ultimately, you're in Florida now, and
Yes.
so why Florida? What took you there versus kind of all the other places that you've been?
Well, my career has always been driven by, in a way, the next opportunity. So, playing it really quickly, it was Dallas, Bahamas, then Las Vegas, believe it or not, for about 6 months, which I actually really enjoyed, but it was the beginning of the downturn. Then Maui, Kauai, at the same time. Then I came all the way back to one of my most adored properties, which is Palmetto Bluff in Bluffton, South Carolina. Imagine 20, 30,000 acres, a really incredible piece of land that First Bears and then Montage has now helped craft. But great team there by the Kiowa partners running Palmetto Bluff. And then the world got crazy, and then I went down to the Cayman Islands, and it was the opportunity to stay in the business and work on with a really terrific team down there to build this new town. And I sort of tease, I got my master's in development working down there. But then, and this leads to Florida, is an opportunity came about to work with Sid Kitson and the Kitson and Partners team. And they were doing two things I thought was really cool. One, they wanted to rebrand a development that had an excessive amount of money spent on it, but it never got off the ground. So the challenge of trying to rebrand that, work through that, come up with a builder program and a sales campaign, and it worked out really well. It was called Talus Park. But then Sid had bigger ambition. He was responsible for one of the largest, I think the largest land sales transaction in the state of Florida. I think it was like 91,000 acres, and about two-thirds of it got put into a nature conservation district so that the Florida panther could go from east to west coast. It's kind of cool. But then he wanted to build the first solar powered town in the country. And Babcock Ranch is just that. Babcock Ranch is thriving now. It's probably in the top 10 of master planned communities in the country. For me, it was a great time in my life, but I'm a luxury guy, and I like to go build small, more boutique communities. And that was more production building and selling off big chunks. And it just didn't agree with the things I love to do. So then Crane Island came about, and I was fortunate enough to get the call to come up here and be part of a small development team of father, son, the Helans, and myself, and then a great team. I tell you, I don't miss one person. I got to recognize Jim Strickland from Historical Concepts is one of the most amazing human beings you'll ever come across. He built, in the world of vernacular architecture, so architecture of the place, Historical Concepts out of Atlanta and Peachtree City is the gold standard for that. And Jim did the land plan here with his team. And I knew two things I had going for it. One, I get close to the low country. I get to work with Jim. The Helans have been great to work with. And I was able to have a clean palette to go build 112 homes. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years, and probably got about 2 or 3 years left to complete the project.
Okay,
So
nice. And that's kind of what I was going to get into next was kind of talk about what you are doing today and kind of what that looks like.
yeah, yeah. So Crane Island started basically St. Patrick's Day of 2018. About 100 acres of upland, and we designed. We could have done 150 properties, but there are major specimen trees here: live oaks with the dripping Spanish moss, a canopy that you had to honor. There were bald eagles that lived here, and all that. So we downscaled, which no developer normally does, almost a third, and went to about 112 properties. And coming here, the thing that I'd done, I think, pretty successfully in Naples that was, well suited for here is a builder program. So you get a land developer and they need builders, but you've got to sometimes really shepherd the builders. So one, they're all kind of singing out the same hymnal, if you will, and that usually that's the design guidelines. And then the model is that there's a central sales and marketing organization to support the whole community. So the process goes something like, I meet Mr. and Mrs. Jones. We fall in love with the river lot. I help them figure out what to put on that river lot, and then you go shop it to the builders. In a
Okay.
lot of communities, the builders got their 4 or 5 plans, and if you love the plan, you're kind of stuck with the builder. And one of the big tenets of what I believe in is there has to be a certain amount of choice for people. And if it's endless choice, it can take forever. But if you give a wealthy family who's busy in their lives, you know, you find the lot that they love, but then I listen to them, and then I can say, you know what, of all the things you talked about, here's 3 plans by 3 different architects that might really get you where you want to go. And then we just polish the plan, and then we introduce them to the builder at some point in the future. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, is working with families, architects, and my team of builders. Which, it's fun. They like to beat each other, but they also like to. They're just glad to be here. So it's a great little spirit of the community. Like, it's healthy co-opetition, as I call it.
Yeah. Well, no, I'd like that project. I mean, it sounds really cool, and it sounds like you've got and you said you've got a couple more years, 2 or 3 years left of
Yes.
additional. I'm assuming additional parts of the island that you're continuing to develop.
Yep. Yep. No,
Okay.
that's exactly right. And this might be a pro tip for any land developer. There's always traditional ways you're going to market, right? So you do your online social ads through Meta and Google and all that. However, the one thing that changed the game for us more than anything was our partnership with. Today they're called Meredith Dot Dash, but in essence, what they really are is Southern Living, right? And so most people in the South been reading Southern Living for generations. Southern Living has great house plans, but they have developed a really unique program with real estate developers that you can cross brand, cross promote. And one of the coolest things that we did here was we launched in 2018. We were awarded the Southern Living National Idea House for 2019. And what it did is it brought in 15,000 people to come see our community in the spring of or summer of 19. We raised $100,000 for charity. We put 3,000 people in hotel stays locally. And here's the best part: we sold about $10 million of dirt and about $40 million worth of vertical improvements. So don't discount brand partners that you can partner with, especially people who write about and care about a way of life, or even, there's if you're in Texas, like Texas Monthly or or D Magazine, they're curating life in that region. And part of that big life, everybody's a designer now. If you look on Instagram,
Yeah.
so there's really great success that can come out of partners, especially media partners that you can work with.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that because I think a lot of people get hung up on the social side and staying with just social ads and everything, and I do think there's something to be said about that. So was this it was an event that you put on, or was it was it over a period of time that you had people coming in and going through this?
Yeah, so we built a 4,500 square foot home in about 6 months because Southern Living said, "Okay, you're the national idea house. You're the only one in the country." We worked with Jim Strickland and Historical to design it. Riverside Custom Homes built it, and we opened those doors. I think it was like July or August of 19, and we had about 4 months to keep the doors open. And so you had to pay money to come in and see it, and you got 100 plus ideas in the house and a really great little booklet you could take with you when you left. So it was a think of it as a model house on steroids. And
Yeah.
as part of the proceeds, we raised money for a local museum that was trying to finish their capital call, and we raised $100,000 so they finished up their capital need. And it was great. So with Southern, you can have an idea house as one level. Our builders were part of the program, and then as a real estate developer, we also had licensing to be able to use the brand. We did all kinds of cross promotion. So you're right. You can do a social media post, but when you do it with Southern Living, you go from like 100,000 eyeballs to like 15 million. So
Yeah. Yeah, a little
it
bit
really
different.
matters.
Little bit different reach there.
Yeah,
Um So, thinking back on your like all the projects that you've been a part of up to this point, I know we'll maybe say that not counting your current project, not counting the current one, but what one kind of stands out in your mind as maybe one that was your favorite to work on?
Um, it's interesting. You always sometimes point to the ones that were the most successful for me, almost like financially or otherwise. But I probably learned more about the craft from Kamana Bay and the team down in the Cayman Islands. I got to work with the greats, DPZ, MRY on land planning. I got to work with Torty Gallus, Mike Watkins, and then a whole host of architects who I now work with today, which is really great. That's where I met Mosier. That's where I met Alison Ramsey, Greg Huddy from his own firm now, C3 Studio. So that for me was the catalyst that kind of made me think differently about developments, made me pay more attention to the financials because we were very much big projects and we had to really make sure we knew every facet from entitlements to land costs to vertical pro forma, all that. So, yeah, I mean, and it's hard for me because I've enjoyed all of them.
Yeah,
Babcock Ranch had also some really amazing qualities. So what's fascinating is when you work on these urban town making, village making projects, it's a lot more than just a homeowner and a builder. It's how do you curate retail? How do you create lifestyle programs, amenities, community centers, all that stuff. Um, so anyway, yeah, that's probably my answer. And it was ironic because I didn't even sell anything down there. It was
just
it
the
was
experience of working with the group and everything.
Yeah, working with the group. We did actually I did do a very luxury rental product there in the town center. And it was amazing. Before people lived there, the town center was somewhat activated, but the day the 100 families moved in, oh my God, it's like the place just suddenly like somebody turned on the switch of a new town. It was really, really cool.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Well, one thing to wrap up here, I go through something we call a lightning round, where I got 5 questions that I'll give to you. We'll do them one at a time, and just looking for like a 60-second type answer. So quick response on each of these.
sure.
I tried to make them relevant just based on your past and everything like that. But first one is, what's been the biggest lesson learned that you've had up to this point in real estate?
Oh, wow. Um, that's a good one. There's been a lot of them. Um, probably the thing in terms of lessons learned is, you can believe in what you're doing, right? You can have a great idea of where you are, but don't ever get too far over your skis, right? And there's been times, well, probably the biggest one, and I say this all the time, is don't launch too early. And also, because if you're selling before you got it all figured out, you can really run into trouble. And the other kind of principle in all that is you only have one shot at creating momentum. Yep.
Yep.
And that's really hard to recast a place if you miss the momentum game. So don't be slow to launch, but don't be too quick to launch. It's probably the best answer.
Awesome. All right, second one. How do you start your day to make it productive in what you're doing now?
You know what? I wish you asked me this question about 10 years ago because I was a lot better at starting my day, planning things out. The biggest thing that I try to do is try to have 30 minutes to an hour of just quiet time, right? I got to think about the stuff I want to try to get done today. I did start using an app called Motion. So Motion is a way, if you got more than one calendar, it is a great platform to be able to merge your calendars. And then I can tell Siri, hey, create this task. I've got to go do this one thing. I need to do on like Wednesday of next week. So what it actually does is it automatically reprioritizes for you during the week. So Motion has been a lifesaver. But just a quiet time to reflect and think about the big rocks, as I call them, that you want to work on each day.
Cool. What's the best piece of advice that you've received in your career? Or maybe it doesn't have to be the best. Let's just say, what's one good piece of advice that you've received in your career? Doesn't We
Oh
don't have to
man.
rank order it.
Um, yeah, it's funny. I had a great boss at Tallis Park, Milt Flynn, and the thing I think Milt always did is he was always like, it didn't matter what you brought to him, and he'd seen enough things in his life. He never freaked out. So Milt was just always calm. And then we used to tease. Uh, we had this he had this glass case, and if you ever got desperate, you could break the glass case, you could go get the answer you needed or whatever. And he we never had to go to that. Like he was always good at just staying calm when things were a little bit crazy. And that I give Milt a lot of credit. He not only good at it, he'd make you laugh about it. So
That's great.
yeah,
Last one here. I feel like you kind of already answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. Maybe there's something else you'd want to add to it. But
sure.
what's one piece of advice on the sales side that you'd give to someone else just getting started in the real estate industry?
Huh. So I'm a huge fan of Covey and the Seven Habits, and you know when you're proactive about your approach with the customer and what you think about and how you kind of imagine where it needs to go. A lot of times for buyers, they don't always understand the process. They don't even always understand what they're looking for. And so one of the great principles of Covey is seek first to understand before you can be understood. Be a great questioner. Um, Treat yourself not as a salesperson, but as a real bona fide consultant and somebody who can be what I call a trusted advisor to people. And then you're never going to be the cheesy sales guy that you're trying to do is schlep something and make a buck. It's not how it works. If you help people get what they want, you'll always get what you want. And it's okay to say no, and it's okay to turn a deal down. Don't be afraid to do that.
Awesome. Well, John, I appreciate you hopping on here and having this conversation. What's the best way for people to connect with you and learn more about Crane Island?
Yeah, sure. Real simple. John at Crane Island is my email address, and my cell phone is 843-475-6686. We live here on Amelia Island. I'd invite people if you want to come see a really interesting boutique development that's a luxury development. We go from 2 to 10 or 12 million. And if you really want to see historic architecture that's brand new, that's kind of what we've done here. And it's been a great joy to be part of and be, somewhat, responsible for. So
Awesome. We'll add those details to the show notes page. And for all of you listening in, thanks for joining us. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks.